2:13 a.m., under warehouse lights bright as interrogation lamps, Naya Ibrahim discovered her toddler calmed only when anatomy formulas floated through the room. The child's tears slowed not for lullabies, not for cartoons, but for the steady rhythm of oxygen levels, muscle groups, and dosage calculations. So while bread browned on conveyor belts and metal racks glowed in neon Riyadh midnight, Naya turned exam notes into bedtime shelter. She was a night shift toaster technician, paid to watch machines spit out perfect slices while her own life looked scorched around the edges. By dawn, her feet ached, her uniform smelled like hot crumbs and grease, and her daughter still needed breakfast, braids, and patience. By afternoon, online nursing modules waited on a cracked phone screen, blinking like accusations beside laundry, dishes, and unpaid bills. Sleep came in fragments, thin as receipts, because single parenthood rarely shuts one door before three more start rattling. Most people imagine failure as one dramatic collapse, but hers looked smaller, meaner, and more ordinary. Missing deadlines because daycare closed early. It looked like studying drug interactions with one hand while the other wiped applesauce from a high-chair tray and answered work messages. It looked like nodding off over cheap instant noodles, waking with a fork in her hand and a pharmacology chapter creased against her cheek. Riyadh moved around her in polished glass and rushing trains, but Naya lived inside the tiny economy of stolen minutes. She learned to stop waiting for ideal conditions, because ideal conditions never volunteer for single mothers with rent due on Thursday. On the metro, she tore open biscuit cartons, flattened the backs, and filled them with handwritten notes on pulse rates and infection signs. Those cardboard scraps slid between diapers, snack packets, and spare socks inside her bag, turning clutter into a mobile classroom. At station stops, while doors hissed open and strangers stared at phones, she reviewed symptoms, treatments, and lab values like emergency prayers. At home, ribbons disappeared into chaos, so she braided her daughter's hair with tiny sticky notes tucked between curls. Each bright square carried one fact, one formula, one task, so even the morning routine became revision instead of delay. Yellow notes meant medications, pink notes meant anatomy, blue notes meant deadlines, and every braid became a color-coded battle plan. In the laundromat, she matched revision cycles to the click of dryer doors and the tumble of spinning clothes behind fogged glass. 15 minutes for cardiac terms, 12 for wound care, 8 to fold shirts, then back to reviewing before another machine beeped. At work, the hiss of her manager's espresso machine became a countdown clock for memory drills between maintenance checks and safety logs. While others scrolled during breaks, Naya stood beside stacked crates, whispering nursing procedures to the rhythm of steaming milk and clattering cups. She taped miniature flashcards inside cabinet doors, near detergent bottles, beside the mirror, and even above the rice container. Her strategy was simple and brutally realistic. If life refused to make room for studying, she would hide studying inside life. She stopped measuring progress by perfect chapters completed and started measuring it by what one waiting line or one bus ride could hold. One formula memorized during soup boiling still counted. One quiz finished in the parking lot before daycare pickup still counted. One page understood after midnight with burning eyes still counted, because momentum grows from scraps before it ever looks like discipline. The hardest nights were not loud ones, but the silent ones when her daughter finally slept and doubt sat heavily across the kitchen table. That doubt knew every vulnerability, the overdue payment, the low test score, the message from school reminding her of another approaching deadline. It asked whether ambition was selfish when a child needed more time, more softness, more of a mother not stretched thin. Naya answered not with speeches, but with systems built small enough to survive exhaustion. She packed tomorrow's clothes before sleeping, portioned meals on one shelf, and set one nightly target small enough to complete. Sometimes that target was 20 review questions. Sometimes it was just understanding one paragraph well enough to explain it without looking down. She kept a notebook called Evidence, where she wrote every past quiz, every finished shift, every week they stayed afloat. On days when emotions lied and told her nothing was changing, that notebook offered hard proof that effort was accumulating. She also stopped worshiping self-reliance, because pride can drain a struggling parent faster than labor ever will. A neighbor watched her daughter for one exam block each week, and Naya repaid her with grocery runs and repaired appliances. A classmate sent voice notes summarizing lectures, which Naya replayed while washing bottles and scrubbing toothpaste from the sink. Her manager, once impatient with her tired eyes, eventually noticed the textbook corners peeking from under maintenance manuals during breaks. Instead of mocking the effort, he shifted her meal break to align with a recorded nursing lab so she could attend. Support did not arrive as miracles. It arrived as practical adjustments, exchanged favors, and people deciding her future was worth 10 extra minutes of inconvenience. Progress still looked messy. She failed one exam by 2 points and cried in a bathroom stall that smelled like bleach and old paper towels. Then she studied the questions she missed, changed how she reviewed, and turned weak topics into first priority targets instead of private shame. She recorded herself reading difficult material and played it while commuting, cooking, and waiting outside pediatric appointments. She used active recall on carton scraps, practiced dosage math until it became automatic, and reviewed mistakes more often than successes. Slowly, the numbers changed. Quiz scores climbed from barely surviving to solidly passing, then from passing to quietly impressive. Her daughter, too young to understand nursing school, still understood repetition, persistence, and the shape of her mother refusing to quit. She watched sticky notes bloom across walls like bright paper leaves, watched tired hands keep moving, watched promises kept in increments. The child who once fell asleep to textbook formulas began reciting color names beside them, then numbers, then letters, growing inside the rhythm of effort. Their apartment never looked like balance. It looked like lunch containers drying near anatomy charts and tiny shoes beside textbooks with highlighted margins. It looked like exhaustion and tenderness sharing the same narrow space without asking permission from one another. Then came graduation morning, sharp and improbable after years that had felt stitched together from alarms, transit cards, and unfinished meals. Naya ironed her gown beside a rack of children's clothes, her fingers trembling more than they had on any exam. Her daughter, hair neatly braided at last, held a few crumpled sticky notes she had saved like treasure from the hardest season. Walking toward the hospital stage, Naya carried her little girl on one hip because childcare plans had collapsed that morning too. Some people saw a ceremony. She saw every metro ride, every biscuit carton, every dryer cycle, every skipped comfort turned into a stepping stone. She crossed that stage with her daughter in one arm and a job offer in the other, looking nothing like the woman who once slept over noodles. Success did not erase the struggle. It translated it. The night shift technician who studied beside toasters had become a nurse trained by urgency, improvisation, and radical consistency. Her daughter will not remember every formula, but she will remember that love can be organized, resilient, and fiercely creative under pressure. That is the lesson hidden inside Naya's story. Stop waiting for long, uninterrupted hours and start hunting for repeatable pockets. Attach one task to an existing routine, because habits survive chaos better than motivation ever does. Convert dead time into live time by carrying portable notes, recorded lessons, or one clear question to think through. Make your goals small enough to finish on your worst days, because completion builds identity faster than ambitious plans abandoned. Track evidence, not moods, because progress is often invisible while it is being built, and obvious only after it stands up. Accept useful help without shame, then return value where you can, because strong people are not isolated people. And if your life feels too crowded for transformation, remember Naya, building a future in metro rides, laundry cycles, espresso hisses, and braids. Some families are not raised in perfect routines and quiet homes. Some are built in stolen minutes, and those minutes can still carry you somewhere extraordinary.